The herbal poultice for a fever isn't magic. It's a complex chemical formula whose ingredients must be harvested in a specific sequence dictated by the stars. Each piece is a fragment of a vast, shattered library, a library you have just spent your life reassembling. And now, you have the final piece. Not a scroll, but a simple wedding veil, its lace impossibly intricate. You lay it over the herbal chart your mother gave you. You align its central pattern with the musical staff of the oldest lullaby. The pieces click into place. A terrifying, blossoming idea that the world was a book written by God and that any man with eyes and a mind could learn to read it for himself without a priest to turn the pages. It was the spread of scientific thought, a heresy more dangerous than any devil, because it threatened the one thing upon which all power was built, the monopoly on truth. This was the infection they feared, an awakening, and the silver cure. This is the knowledge that men were tortured to forget, a circuit connecting the stars to the stone. This shatters the assumption that medieval people were technologically primitive. They were just practicing a different kind of science, one we have forgotten, one the church actively tried to erase. They weren't just building a church, they were completing an engine. Every stone placed, every window angled, wasn't just for the glory of God. It was to fine-tune the device they had seized. They suppressed the original purpose, but they kept the machine. The question that should keep you awake tonight is not whether they succeeded. He calls for fasting. He calls for prayer. He has no idea he is presiding over his own undoing, because this isn't God's wrath. It's the emperor's. The secret that Lycanus's codex bleeds onto the page is one of chilling, simple evil. Weeks ago, under the cloak of new moons, the emperor's agents, men who look like merchants, like pilgrims, like you, secretly introduced a poisoned harvest into the archbishop's lands. Not with arsenic, not with nightshade, but with something far more insidious. Ergot, the stone beneath your fingers, is slick with a damp chill that seeps into your bones. A cold that has nothing to do with the winter outside and everything to do with the terror inside. Your steward has just finished his report. The words hang in the air like icicles. Blight, frost, famine. Your people are starving. You can almost hear it in the wind that rattles the shutters. A thin, high-pitched wail that sounds like 1,000 empty stomachs. You have ordered prayers. You have paid the church for relics and benedictions. You close your eyes and drink. The taste is bitter, metallic, like licking a cold stone. You swallow, and a strange warmth spreads from your stomach through your veins, a tingling fire that isn't painful, but alarmingly alive. This is the forbidden science, the truth that shatters the medieval world you thought you knew. This isn't chaos. It isn't a mindless trance. It is a carefully guided journey into the labyrinth of your own consciousness. They couldn't burn the songs your mother sang to you. They couldn't outlaw the shape of a Celtic knot, not when it was already carved into the megalithic tombs of your ancestors, tombs that now, you understand, aren't just graves. They are resonant chambers, and the patterns on their stones are circuit diagrams. This secret history is protected by women, passed from mother to daughter in whispered tones, while shelling peas or spinning wool. A history hidden in plain sight. The old wives' tale about planting by the full moon isn't superstition. It's a fragment of a lost agricultural science. The candlelight flickers, casting your shadow long and distorted against the wall. a dark twin who knows the secret you are only just beginning to grasp. The great sickness, the Codex explains in its spidery script, was never a pestilence of the body. It was a disease of the soul, a contagion of the mind. That was the Church's name for it. It was the dawn of questions, the fever of inquiry. A holy puzzle to occupy your mind so you don't ask what's humming in the basement. But the conspiracy runs deeper. 99% of people believe the great alliances of the past were forged with gold and marriage. The truth is far stranger. Historical fragments speak of an emperor, a master of celestial knowledge, astronomy, star charts, cosmic cycles, forming a marriage with the cult. It wasn't an alliance of families. It was a scientific partnership. It was a plan to merge his knowledge of the heavens with their knowledge of the earth. Celestial energy with terrestrial power. Goethe, the weaver's wife, claws at visions only she can see, screaming about demons pouring from the cobblestones. Old Thomas, the most pious man you know, spins and spins until he collapses, foaming at the mouth, only to rise and begin again. The air is a cacophony, a wall of sound made of shrieks, prayers, and the wet, rhythmic slap of bare feet on stone, a sound that doesn't stop, day or night. From the cathedral steps, the rival archbishop, his face, pale with a holy terror he does not know is false, proclaims this the righteous anger of the Almighty. What they don't want you to know is that the most dangerous map in history had no roads, no cities, and no borders. It was a weapon disguised as a diagram, and 99% of people who see it today would have no idea they are looking at the blueprint for a silent, bloodless world war. You are a duke. The year is 1287. You are sitting in a chamber so cold you can see your own breath, a pale ghost in the candlelight. Anthony's fire, where entire villages went mad, their limbs rotting with gangrene from eating contaminated rye bread. In large doses, it is a horrific death. But what the Church systematically destroyed, what they didn't want anyone to know, is that these people weren't fools. They were alchemists, in precise, controlled microdoses, prepared with a knowledge we are only just rediscovering. That deadly poison becomes something else entirely. It becomes a powerful psychoactive, a key. You lift the cup to your lips. The sound of your own heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. This is the moment of truth. But traditions didn't vanish. They were encoded. They went deep, not into the earth, but into the very fabric of culture, hidden in things a patriarchal world dismissed and ignored. The lullabies, the recipes, the patterns. This is a conspiracy of cultural survival. Think of it like a secret message hidden inside a digital photograph today, a technology called steganography. The data is there, invisible to anyone who doesn't have the key. Here, the key is the folk song. The password is the pattern in the lace. The encryption is the witch's rhyme. The monk's last words haunt you. They fear the great sickness and the silver cure. But the sickness wasn't a plague, and the cure wasn't a prayer. Here, in the hidden pages of Licanus's Codex, the ink tells a story that turns history inside out. And the air in this stone chamber suddenly feels thin, stolen from your lungs. You trace the diagram again. It is not a formula for gold. Your mind has been trying to force it into that shape, the shape everyone expects from an alchemist's tome, but it refuses. The original pagan temple wasn't built here by accident. It was a giant terrestrial device designed to harness this energy. The Church didn't build charters here by accident either. They knew. Think of it not as an act of faith, but as an act of conquest. It's the modern equivalent of building a military fortress directly on top of your enemy's primary power plant. It's an act of symbolic and physical domination, a way to co-opt and suppress a rival's power source by burying it under layers of your own iconography. The labyrinth on the floor? It's a beautiful distraction. The most terrifying plague of the 9th century wasn't a disease. It was a weapon. It was murder, committed on 1,000 souls at once, and the murderers convinced everyone it was the will of God. You stand at the edge of the market square, the dust thick in your throat. It's not the dust of commerce. It's the dust kicked up by dancing feet. Hundreds of them. They are your neighbors, your friends, the baker who sold you bread this morning. Now they move without rhythm, without joy, their limbs jerking in a ghastly ballet of madness. This ghost army, this network of spies hidden in plain sight, is dismantling your world piece by piece. They aren't fighting for land or for gold. They are a shield, protecting something the Emperor holds. A secret so vital, so reality-shattering, that an invisible army of women would poison a continent to keep it safe. But what secret could possibly be worth that price? He holds the chalice out to you. Your hand trembles as you take it. It's heavier than it looks. Inside is a dark, viscous liquid. Modern archaeologists, excavating a site just like this one, found chalices that held a secret they weren't expecting. When they analyzed the residue, the pollen that had settled inside over 8 centuries, they found the microscopic traces of Claviceps purpurea, ergot fungus. 99% of people who hear the word ergot think of poison, of the gruesome medieval affliction known as saint. They still label pioneers as lunatics and conspiracy theorists. They still hide inconvenient truths in plain sight, confident that you will believe the sanitized version of reality fed to you every single day through your screens. The Codex of Emperor Lycanus is not just a relic of the past, it is a mirror. It forces us to ask the most dangerous question of all. If they engineered an entire dark age to maintain control 1,000 years ago, what are they hiding from us right now? They lied about the past. What else are they lying about today? A trifle, an old wife's fancy, but you know the truth. 99% of people, now and for the next 700 years, will see a decoration. They will never see what the Inquisitors missed. A diagram for calculating a lunar eclipse. The rhyme she hums under her breath isn't a nursery tune. It's a mnemonic device, a key. Each verse corresponds to a phase of the moon, each note a variable in an ancient equation. This is how the knowledge survived after they erased Lycanus, after they drove your ancestors from the silver mines and declared them devils. But in their chilling efficiency, they made one catastrophic miscalculation. They forgot about his bride, and in the silent darkness of a world that is forgetting, she still carries the one thing they couldn't pulverize, their shared world-shattering secret. Until a 2007 geological survey, almost completely ignored by mainstream historians, found something impossible. A telluric current, a river of natural electricity flowing through the Earth's crust, runs directly, precisely, beneath the cathedral's choir. It's not just a current, it's an anomaly, a place where the planet's own lifeblood surges close to the surface. You can feel it now, a charge in the air that makes the small hairs on your arms stand up. The ASMR quality crackle of static electricity, a sound you feel deep in your teeth, a low thrum that vibrates in your bones. This place is alive. The etching is crude, barely legible, But it is done. It says, they fear the great sickness and the silver cure. Why? Why would anyone fear a cure? The question hangs in the dead air, a new ghost in a chamber already full of them. What secret is more dangerous than the disease itself? The paranoia is a sickness in your gut, a constant metallic taste of fear that never leaves. You look at your commanders, men who have bled for you, and you see only ghosts. Did his wife receive a remedy from a traveling healer? Did that market vendor slip him a coated bundle of herbs? The sweet, sick smell of rotting conspiracy is everywhere, clinging to the tapestries, poisoning your wine, making you tear your own kingdom apart from the inside. You cannot fight an enemy you cannot see. You've seen the soldier who could not sleep for the horrors he'd witnessed in battle finally find a night of peace. This doesn't look like damnation. It looks like a last resort. Lycanus begins to speak, his voice a low rumble that seems to vibrate in your bones. He doesn't speak of angels or demons. He speaks of the mind as a locked room, and the sickness of the soul as a prisoner trapped within it. He says the priests offer you prayers to shout through the keyhole, but he offers you the key. The discrediting of his herbal and mind-expanding medicine is mirrored in the modern suppression of holistic health solutions that threaten the pharmaceutical giants. The smearing of his powerful female allies as witches is the direct ancestor of every modern media campaign that vilifies powerful women who challenge the status quo. The institutions of control are still here. They've just changed their robes. They no longer use the fear of heresy. They use the fear of economic collapse, of foreign threats, of social chaos. They still create official stories to protect their power. The click-clack of the bone bobbins is a frantic, tiny heartbeat in the oppressive silence of the night. It's a sound so common, so domestic, that no one would ever suspect it's the sound of a forbidden science being passed down. She guides your hand, her touch as dry as old parchment. No, child. The knot goes under, then twice around, like the serpent eating its tail. You mimic the motion, your thread pulling tight with a soft shush. It's a complex spiral pattern. To the village priest, it's a lovely bit of decoration for a lady's cuff. It was not enough to tear the house down. They had to salt the earth. They had to grind the very memory of its existence into nothing. They were terrified, not of the man, but of what he knew. They feared that the stones themselves might remember. The emperor is gone. His castles are dust. His name is a pockmark on a forgotten stone. And his followers are the first to be branded with a label that will be used to persecute the different and the brilliant for the next 1,000 years. The plan seems perfect, the victory absolute. It's in the low hum you can almost feel through the soles of your shoes, a vibration that seems to come from the very heart of the world. What they don't want you to know is that this site was chosen for a reason that has nothing to do with saints or miracles. An ancient, forbidden codex, dismissed as heresy, claimed this hill was once the central temple for a powerful moon cult. It wasn't just a holy site, it was an instrument. For centuries, this was just a myth. May you guard this better than we did. A universe of knowledge now rests in a tomb for one. With trembling hands, you pull a small, sharp stylus from your woolen robe. The lead of the box is soft. Your movements are clumsy in the dark, guided more by feel than sight. You scratch a message into the metal, a desperate clue for a future you will never see. A single, cryptic line for anyone brave or foolish enough to ever come looking. Your breath catches in your throat as you etch the final word, the dangerous word. For centuries, historians dismissed their captured messages as witches' recipes, superstitious charms, and herbal nonsense. But a groundbreaking 2018 analysis of their recovered witch bottles revealed a terrifying secret. They contain complex chemical signatures, layered pollens, and rare spores. It's not a charm, it's a hard drive, a medieval data packet containing coded messages, troop movements, supply vulnerabilities, the names of blackmail targets. This is a medieval version of a cyber warfare campaign, fought with whispers and botany, designed to make you, the powerful lord, feel like you're going insane. And it works. It's the scent of dried herbs, damp earth, and ozone, as if a storm is gathering inside these stone walls. Your knuckles are white where you grip the rough wool of your tunic. You've seen demonic possession. You've seen the village priest perform exorcisms that left a boy screaming and broken. That is what they tell you this is. A willing invitation for a demon to enter your soul. But you've also seen the others, the ones who have drunk from this chalice before. You've seen the madness leave their eyes. A war where more advanced, more equitable, or freer societies are often conquered and erased by more brutal, centralized, and controlling ones. The victors don't just write the books. They burn the libraries of the conquered and call the resulting ignorance peace. Feel the cold weight of that truth. Our modern world is built on the ashes of that fire. The suppression of Lacanus's weather-influencing science is mirrored today in the burying of revolutionary energy technologies that threaten the trillion-dollar fossil fuel industry. The church believed they had burned every book, every scroll, every last testament of the moon cult. They never thought to check the lace. Your fingers ache. In the cramped, smoky room, the only light is a single tallow candle that spits and sputters, casting your shadow long and distorted against the wattle and daub wall. It smells of damp wool, drying herbs, and fear. Your grandmother sits opposite you, her face a roadmap of wrinkles in the flickering gloom. Her hands, gnarled and swift, move in a blur. You are learning the woman's art. It's a strategy as old as power itself. If you cannot defeat the message, you destroy the messenger by declaring them crazy. Years later, scholars, our scholars in our time, will dig at the site of that fortress. They won't find fallen walls. They will find something far more disturbing. At the very base of the foundations, they will uncover vast pits of grit and powder. The foundation stones themselves were not just removed. They were dragged to massive millstones and pulverized into dust, an act of ritualistic fury that required 10 times the effort of simple demolition. The stones of Chartres Cathedral hold a prayer, but the earth beneath it holds a secret with a pulse. You are standing inside, the air cold enough to see your breath hang like a ghost. Light, fractured into 1,000 divine colors by the stained glass, spills across the floor, illuminating the famous labyrinth. It's a path of meditation, a symbol of a long journey to God. And that's the story you've been told. It's the story 99% of the millions who have walked this path believe. But the real secret isn't in the twists of the maze. It's the historical equivalent of a future king purging the servers of all incriminating data, or a vast corporation using binding agreements to silence anyone who who knows the truth of their product. The narrative must be controlled, then and now. What survives is never the whole truth. It is the winner's cut, the approved version. You shove the codex one last time, forcing it deep into the recess behind the brittle skeleton of a child, no older than 10. The bones shift with a dry rattle, a final soft protest. Forgive me, little one, you think. They were all moves in a game you don't even know you're playing. In the suffocating silence of your war room, you can almost hear it now. The wet, soft thump of a small clay bottle being buried at a crossroads in the dead of night. They call themselves the Whisperers, the female leaders of a moon cult the church desperately hunts as witches. They don't carry swords. Their weapons are knowledge of pollen, of blight, of the exact beetle that can lay waste to a silo. Before you, a man whose face is lost in the flickering firelight holds up a single heavy chalice. He is Lycanus. The church calls him a sorcerer. The desperate villagers who seek him out in the dead of night call him a healer. His followers, the handful of you huddled in this illegal sanctuary, call him the First Walker. You are here to become what the priests spit on, what they call the moon-touched. The air is thick with the smell of something you can't name. Not incense, but something more ancient. They represented a decentralized, nature-based, scientifically advanced society, where knowledge, not birthright, not divine decree, was the source of power. Their union was a terrifying prospect to the old guard. Science, the emperor, marrying resource control, the priestess. It was a direct threat to the feudal religious complex that wanted to own both your soul and your body. So they had to be erased. This is the secret 99% of people never learn. History is not a straight line of progress. It is a battlefield of timelines. A large, perfectly formed resonant crystal. The technology didn't die with them. They just hid the key. And now, you're the only one who knows where the lock is. They didn't just kill him. They made his name, his science, his very philosophy synonymous with insanity. You see it taking root in the eyes of the villagers. They look at the sky differently now. The moon is no longer a source of wonder. It is a source of madness. Lycanus's advanced knowledge of acoustics, engineering, and celestial mechanics is recast as the ramblings of a dangerous madman. It's a character assassination so complete, it makes modern-day smear campaigns look like clumsy amateurism. But the playbook is identical. And as the water in the bowls begins to vibrate violently, sloshing over the bronze rims in cold, dark waves, you realize with a terror that freezes your soul. The unthinkable thing Lycanus was trying to do wasn't to create a weapon. It was to build a shield against something that was already on its way. You must ensure that the only path to salvation from sickness or from sin leads through their doors. This book offered another path, so it had to burn. You remember the abbot's words, his voice as cold as this catacomb stone. We are pruning the library, brother. We are cutting away the disease to save the tree of knowledge. But you saw what he was doing. It wasn't pruning. It was clear-cutting the entire forest to plant a single, sterile seed. A key bridge inspected just last week has collapsed into the gorge, its stone footings crumbled to dust. Your most loyal knight, a man who took an arrow for you at the siege of Blackwood, has sent a raven. He is switching his allegiance. He offers no reason. You blame God. You blame a curse. You have your priests perform exorcisms on the fields. But 99% of the most powerful men of this age will never understand the truth. The rot wasn't an act of God. The bridge wasn't poor masonry. The knight wasn't a traitor. What they don't want you to know is that the most dangerous medicine in the Middle Ages wasn't a poison. It was a cure. A cure so powerful, so effective, the church had to burn the healers, destroy the texts, and declare the entire science a demonic art. They buried the truth under 1,000 years of fear, but they couldn't bury the evidence. You are shivering, but not from the cold. The stone of the hidden observatory is like ice against your back, but the chill comes from within. The story of the emperor who married the moon isn't ancient history. It's a blueprint for control, a schematic that is still being used against you today. The stunning, mind-shattering truth is this: the Dark Ages were not a natural decline. They were an engineered suppression. An entire timeline of scientific and social progress was deliberately severed, cauterized from the memory of the world because it threatened the centralization of power. Lycanus and the moon cult weren't heretics. They were the future you were never meant to see. The Codex, torn apart and its pages scattered across the empire, dismissed as the ravings of a madman. But as your candle flickers, casting dancing shadows on the wall, your eye catches a final, tiny annotation at the bottom of the last page. It was added later in a hurried, desperate script. It's not a schematic. It's a map coordinate, pointing to a single isolated peak in the northern mountains. Beside it, a small, elegant drawing of the one component they couldn't replicate. The heart of the machine, the key they couldn't bring themselves to destroy. Instead, they are paraded through town squares in chains, their heads shaved, their eyes wild with terror and confusion. And the priests invent a new category for them, a new sin, a new sickness. They are not heretics, they are lunatici, the moon mad, those whose minds have been broken by staring at the moon, just as their master did. It's a breathtaking act of psychological warfare. The very origin of our word lunatic was not a diagnosis, but a politically engineered slander designed to poison a man's legacy forever. Your shaking hand flies to the diagrams spread across the oak table, your finger tracing the planetary alignments. It's not just the moon. The charts confirm it. Something else is aligned with it tonight. Something vast and dark, a celestial wanderer unseen by the naked eye, its gravitational shadow falling over you all. The book in this box, the lead Codex of Lycanus, was deemed the worst kind of heresy. Not because it spoke of beasts, but because it spoke of cures, of a world where sickness wasn't a punishment from God, but a mechanism of nature. It contained anatomical drawings of such detail they were called demonic. It listed herbal compounds that could deaden pain, calm a frantic mind, or fight an infection. Knowledge that threatened the church's monopoly on healing through prayer alone. To control the soul, you must first control the body. The official record says Emperor Lycanus's army was a joke, a force so small it couldn't defend a single castle, let alone an empire. What the record keepers didn't know, what they were never meant to know, is that you can't count an army made of shadows. The report lies on your oaken table, the parchment still damp from the panicked rider's journey. It makes no sense. The grain in your northern fiefdom, the grain meant to feed your soldiers before the march, is inexplicably blighted. a creeping silver rot devours the stalks from the inside out. What could be so important that he would risk being remembered by history as a madman? We are the survivors of an apocalypse, picking through the ruins of a world so far beyond our own. We called its memory magic and heresy. And if the resonance is returning, what happens when the interruption is finally over? Why pray to a church for deliverance from drought when the emperor can deliver it himself? The entire worldview built on supplication, on dependence, on the idea that humanity is helpless without the church as an intermediary, it would have shattered. This wasn't heresy, it was liberation, and they could not, would not, ever allow it. The power to feed the world is the power to rule it, and they had to bury that secret at any cost. The project was silenced. The emperor and his priestess, victims of a sudden, convenient illness. This is a truth 99% of people will never learn. History is not just written by the victors. It is meticulously edited, with entire lives deleted like a scribe's mistake. But erasing his stone and his name isn't enough. They need to erase his ideas, and for that, they need a new kind of weapon, a word. You see his followers, the men and women who studied the stars and the tides with him, being rounded up. They are not burned as heretics. That would grant them the dignity of martyrdom. His last letter, smuggled to you by a sympathetic guard, spoke of a breakthrough, a way to use the moon's voice to do the unthinkable. But as you watch the water, the low, steady thrum suddenly changes. The frequency shifts, climbing higher, a strained, keening whine that makes the fine hairs on your arms stand on end. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drum against the celestial choir. This is not in the codex. It's a new note, a dissonant, screaming chord in the universal harmony. This is the secret they will never teach in the histories to come. 99% of people will be told that monasteries were bastions of knowledge, quiet libraries carefully preserving the past. It's a comforting lie. The forbidden truth is that they were often incinerators. Their primary function wasn't preservation, it was curation. And curation is a gentle word for destruction, for erasing anything that contradicted the narrow, approved doctrine. Anything that suggested the world was older, bigger, or more complex than the story they had decided to tell. What were they building with all that silver and all that forbidden knowledge? What were they preparing for? Who is the real conduit to God? The one who prays for answers, or the one who calculates them? The power of the church rests on a monopoly of knowledge, and here, in the cold, silent forest, Lycanus is committing the ultimate sin. He is proving them obsolete. The Codex hinted that these observations, this perfect lunar tracking, were only the first step. Predicting eclipses was a mere party trick, a proof of concept. The real work, the calculation he was risking his empire and his soul for, was for something else entirely. What was he trying to find? We were not the beginning. We were an interruption. The screen freezes on the last word. Interruption. All of it. The cathedrals, the crusades, the kings, the plagues. The slow, agonizing crawl out of the mud and back to the stars. It was all just a detour. A long, bloody, 1,000-year-long interruption. The weight of that single word presses down on you, heavier than the centuries, heavier than the lead. It means we are not the pinnacle of human achievement. Imagine a world where the gnawing emptiness in a child's stomach could be filled, not by the grace of a priest's prayer, but by the will of an emperor who could turn a dial and make it rain. And in that thought, the full, terrifying truth reveals itself. This wasn't just an invention, it was a revolution that had to be stopped. An emperor who commands the reign holds a power more immediate, more tangible, more real to the common person than any distant, unknowable god. A series of quick, angry taps, and the letters that formed his identity are reduced to a scar of meaningless gouges in the stone. They do this everywhere. In the few monastery ledgers where his patronage was recorded, on the charters granting him land. A coordinated, silent campaign of erasure that moves like a plague across the continent. They are pulling his thread from the tapestry of history, leaving behind not even a hole, but a seamless lie. It's the same crushing loneliness felt by the first physician to suggest disease was carried by invisible things in the air, only to be laughed out of the room by men who still blamed illness on unhappy spirits. The truth is a cold and lonely country. Lycanus believed you could do more than just listen to the celestial song. He believed you could learn to sing back. He was convinced that by using sound, mirrors, and precisely angled crystals, you could amplify the moon's resonance to focus its energy like a lens focuses the sun. Up above, in the world of the living, the fires are still burning. You can picture it perfectly. The courtyard of your monastery, once a place of quiet contemplation, now an execution ground for ideas. You see the faces of your brothers, illuminated by the hungry flames, some ecstatic, their eyes wide with righteous fury, others hollow, their faith a mask for a deep and terrible obedience. They are feeding the pyre with wisdom, tossing in scrolls of ancient philosophy, medical treatises from Cordoba, poems that dared to speak of the human heart without mentioning God. Her authority is tied to the lunar cycles that govern her people, the tangible wealth beneath her feet, the secret wisdom of geology and metallurgy passed down from mother to daughter. This is the truth the church had to bury with fire and inquisitions. A world where a woman's power, rooted in nature and resources, could rival and perhaps even eclipse the popes. The alliance is sealed. The silver flows. The observatories are built in secret. But standing in the cold, metallic silence of this subterranean hall, you're haunted by the one question that remains unanswered. For what ultimate goal? It's the exact same tactic used to discredit whistleblowers today. Label the messenger as unstable, a traitor, a heretic, and you never have to address the terrifying truth of their message. Why? You look at the emperor, a man of flesh and blood, mapping God's own creation with brass and stone, and you understand the church's existential terror. If a so-called heretic emperor can predict the next solar eclipse with more precision than the Pope's own astrologers, if he can chart the seasons and tides by his own intellect, then who truly holds the divine keys to the kingdom? We have looked to the heavens not with prayer, but with rockets and telescopes. The resonance, is that what we call quantum mechanics? The strange, interconnected nature of the universe that our science is only now beginning to grasp. You scroll to the final line, the one at the very bottom of the lead plate, etched with a furious, desperate pressure. Your skin goes cold. It is the most terrifying thing you have ever read, because it reframes every single thing you have ever been taught. The greatest lie they will ever tell is that progress is linear. What they don't want you to know is that this isn't science fiction. In the 21st century, they call it cloud seeding. They use airplanes to fire silver iodide into the clouds, forcing moisture to condense around the particles and fall as rain. The principle is exactly the same. You are staring at the schematics for a medieval weather machine, a technology that could have ended the relentless cycles of drought and famine forever. Men with mallets and chisels move with a terrifying reverence, lowering each massive block, each carved lintel, as if handling a sacred object they despise. They are performing an ancient Roman ritual, one the church has now perfected, a curse worse than death. Damnatio memoriae, the damnation of memory. You can almost hear it on the wind, a sound that will haunt your sleep for decades. The high-pitched shriek of iron chisel on slate as they find his name carved above a forgotten doorway. You have no names for what you are witnessing. You cannot call these bowls primitive gravitational wave detectors. You cannot whisper the words quantum entanglement to explain how a dead rock floating in the endless void can physically affect a single drop of water here in this room, in this moment. You are a scientist without a language, a discoverer born 1,000 years too early. Each rasp of the lead-sealed codex against the rough-hewn niche is a scream you're trying to suppress. Your fingernails are cracked, bleeding into the grime, but the pain is a distant thing, a faint star in a universe of terror. This box, this leaden coffin for a universe of thought, is heavier than sin, and you are about to bury it with the dead. You pause, listening. Nothing but the wet, slick sound of water dripping somewhere in the darkness, and the phantom whisper of 100 departed souls. They are your only witnesses. The Emperor offers his imperial protection, his legions, and a treasure beyond price. Astronomical knowledge from forbidden Arabic texts, schematics for lenses and gears that could map the heavens. In return, the Bride of the Moon offers him a river of silver, so vast it could make him utterly independent of the squabbling nobles and the grasping hands of the Vatican. A perfect, terrifying symbiosis. You watch as the Emperor bows his head, not to a woman he sees as his lesser, but to a fellow monarch, a wielder of a different, perhaps older, form of power. But a codex smuggled from a dying monk tells a different truth. A 2011 ground-penetrating radar survey will one day prove him right, revealing foundations not of a temple, but of a complex astronomical observatory. Its stone markers aligned perfectly with the 18.6-year cycle of the lunar standstills. They didn't burn sorcerers there. They burned scientists. They buried their knowledge under the lie of heresy. It is the ultimate gaslighting campaign, a strategy of control so complete it feels modern. She saw the next 1,000 years of history before they even happened. But then, the prophecy offers a sliver of terrifying hope. But the moon remembers. The stones remember. When humanity looks to the stars again, not with prayer, but with mathematics, the resonance will return. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, Einstein. You realize with a jolt that our greatest intellectual leaps forward were not new discoveries. They were echoes. Humanity, waking from a chemically induced coma, slowly remembering a dream it wasn't supposed to have. The math has returned. The stargazing has returned. Chanted in unison by trained priests, these sounds were designed to vibrate with the telluric currents, amplified by the great stone dishes, and beamed into the sky. You can almost hear it now, a low hum that vibrates in the bones of your jaw, a sound designed to make the very air tremble. The visceral shock hits you not like a wave, but like a shard of ice to the heart. They were using focused sound and telluric energy to ionize the atmosphere, to stimulate the formation of clouds, to force the sky to give up its rain. They don't just want to kill you. They want to unhappen you. You stand on a distant hill, the wind whipping your cloak, and you watch them do it. It's not a siege, it's a dismantling, a surgical, hateful unmaking of everything Lycanus ever built. Below you, one of his great fortress observatories, a place of stone and starlight, is being taken apart, not with the chaotic rage of conquest, but with the cold, meticulous precision of a scribe correcting a blasphemous text. Lycanus calculated that every celestial body sings its own song, a resonant frequency that subtly alters everything it touches, the germination of seeds in the dark earth, the madness that seizes wolves, the very stability of the rock beneath your feet. This is the secret the church fears most. Not heresy, but obsolescence. If the heavens are not the whimsical domain of God, but a predictable, physical machine governed by unwavering laws, then man might not need to pray. He might only need to measure. And if he can measure, perhaps he can learn to manipulate. The stone scrapes your knuckles raw, but you don't stop. The air is thick with the sweet, cloying smell of decay and damp earth, a scent that clings to the inside of your nose and the back of your throat. This is a place for the dead, a catacomb sealed a generation ago, reserved for the victims of the great pestilence. A place of such profound fear that not even the abbot dares to tread here, which is exactly why you chose it. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the chilling silence. It is the most audacious political and economic alliance in human history, hidden in plain sight. Historians have hidden this for centuries, burying it under dismissive labels like pagan folklore or heretical fantasy. It's the same tactic used today when textbooks gloss over the female mathematicians who calculated trajectories for space missions, or the women who led resistance cells in wartime. Sanitize the past, uphold the narrative of male dominion. But the truth is a stubborn thing. This is the forbidden knowledge, the secret 99% of people will never learn. That long before the church declared all wisdom its own, societies that they dismissed as pagan possessed a profound and terrifyingly accurate understanding of celestial mechanics. This is a science the church is systematically hunting, rebranding as witchcraft, and burning at the stake. They have to. You think of the whispers you've heard of a supposed heretic camp recently purged in the Harz Mountains. The official story is that they found a pagan temple desecrated with animal bones. An entire era of human history deliberately created to bury a truth so profound it threatened the very foundations of the New World Order. They didn't just kill people, they killed the very idea of progress. It's the same tactic used by modern regimes that rewrite textbooks and erase dissidents from photographs. Deny the past, and you own the future. They will teach that the earth is a dead thing, and the heavens are the domain of priests. She predicted it all, the geocentric model, the divorce of humanity from the natural world, the transformation of science into blasphemy. 99% of people have never heard the term telluric energy, but ancient cultures knew the planet had a pulse, a deep, resonant hum, and they were learning how to use it. The observatories were not for seeing, they were for focusing. Immense dishes of polished stone and crystal, angled not just at stars, but at specific nodes on the agricultural map you saw earlier, the very map that marked the Earth's veins. The incantations weren't prayers whispered to the heavens. They were resonant frequencies. You see the notations, a form of mathematics so elegant, it looks like music. You can make them hate their neighbors. You can make them burn witches. You can make them hunt an emperor. The forgery is complete. The ink is dry. The lie is now law, blessed by God and sealed in wax. The church has its justification. The generals have their orders. The assassins sharpen their blades. But as the forged document is carried from that poled stone room, a single, terrifying question hangs in the air, unspoken. The paper gives them the right to kill Lycanus. But how do you kill an emperor who can predict your every move? And there it is. Not a sound for the ears, but a feeling deep in the roots of your teeth. A vibration that hums in the marrow of your bones. A low rhythmic thrum as the water shivers in place, its surface trembling with a million microscopic waves. This is the moon's voice. The metallic taste of it coats your tongue. It is a physical pressure, a tangible wave of gravity washing over the turning planet. The ink is smudged as if by a trembling hand. Economic control was only the beginning. The map, the diagrams, this unholy ability to predict the rhythm of the earth, it had one final, terrifying application. A purpose that went beyond wealth or warfare. Something that made starving a nation look like a child's game. It's the distant rhythmic tap-tap-tapping of hammers on ore. The soft scrape of a silver stylus on a slate tablet recording yields. The almost imperceptible chime of 1,000 tiny silver bells woven into the tapestries that depict not saints, but star charts of impossible accuracy. This is a power structure operating entirely outside the known world. And the emperor, the most powerful man in Christendom, has come to her, not as a conqueror, but as a suitor. The codices call it the marriage to the moon. But it's no celestial event. His lips move, but the words are not incantations to some forest devil. You creep closer, the crunch of a twig under your boot sounding like a thunderclap in the unnatural quiet. You hear the sounds clearly now. They are numbers, formulae, a low, hypnotic recitation of angles and arcs, velocities and vectors. He is not praying, he is calculating. His eyes, dark and fiercely intelligent, are fixed on the moon's slow, majestic journey across the ecliptic. His voice, a living abacus, tracking its path. They will burn our knowledge, she writes, and call it the light of God. You see it. You see the pyres, not of witches, but of engineers. You see libraries of astronomical charts and biological treatises turned to ash, the smoke blotting out the very stars they had so carefully mapped. They will create a dark age to hide their crime. This is the moment that shatters everything. The Dark Ages were not a slow decay. They were a cover-up, a murder scene wiped clean. They believe the great observatories they built were for tracking star portents, for pleading with distant gods. That is the story they let history remember. It is a comfortable lie. Here, in the candlelight, the lie burns away. The diagrams inked before you are not constellations. They are schematics. The script is not poetry, it is physics. The marriage was a union of two sciences, his understanding of astronomical alignment, and her people's forbidden knowledge of the earth itself, of the telluric currents that flow like unseen rivers beneath the soil. We see its echoes today, don't we? In the grainy, doctored videos that incite riots, in the falsified intelligence reports, printed on official letterhead, used to justify wars that kill hundreds of thousands. We see it in the corporate-funded studies designed not to find truth, but to muddy the waters on everything from the poison in our food to the warming of our planet. The creation of a false reality is the ultimate and most terrifying tool of control. Because once you can make people believe a lie, you can make them do anything. Lycanus, your disgraced teacher, called it celestial resonance. His forbidden codex, its pages as brittle and dry as autumn leaves, is hidden beneath a loose floorstone back in your Spartan chamber. It doesn't speak of fate written by angels. It speaks of physics written in gravity. 99% of people, from the serf shivering in his hovel to the Pope on his golden throne, believe the moon simply pulls the tides. A quaint, simple magic. Lycanus taught you the terrifying truth. The moon pulls everything. You lean closer to the central bowl, your breath held tight in your chest. It's the same reason today that revolutionary technologies, from drought-resistant seeds to paradigm-shifting energy sources, face such ferocious opposition from the industries that profit from the old way of doing things. It's never about the technology itself. It's about who loses control when the truth is revealed. Lycanus proved that the power to feed or to starve nations wasn't in God's hands, but in the hands of whoever owned the data. But as you trace the edges of this story within the codex, the script changes. The confident loops of the scribe grow jagged, panicked. But what the chroniclers, writing with trembling hands for their patriarchs, failed to tell you is that this wasn't a title of romance. It was a title of command. She is the high priestess of a matriarchal cult that controls nearly 80% of Central Europe's silver mines. Her power isn't granted by a king. It's drawn from the earth itself, from a network of tunnels and veins that are the continent's true circulatory system. You can hear it now, the ASMR quality hum of the place. In the center of the clearing, you see him, not Emperor Lycanus in gilded robes, but a man in simple, worn linen, his breath a cloud of steam in the chill. He is surrounded by artifacts that feel alien to this time. Polished discs of obsidian, blacker than a starless night, are angled on tripods, drinking in the moonlight. Strange articulated arms of brass, covered in intricate etchings, are aimed at the sky, their gears making a faint, dry click as they are adjusted. This is the scene they will paint as sorcery. A final, desperate attempt to create a great storm, a hyper-hurricane that would shatter the armies marching on them. A storm to shield bare lands and their knowledge behind an impenetrable wall of wind and water. You can almost hear it now, the ASMR quality scrape of her stylus against the soft lead plate as she etched the final words. The sky outside her window already turning a sickly, ominous gray. The ritual had begun, and it had failed. The text shifts. It is no longer a record. It is a prophecy. Your breath catches in your throat. The emperor was not praying for rain. He was building a machine to command it. This is the secret hidden on the final, brittle pages of the codex. The truth that cost him everything. You run your thumb over the vellum, the skin so fine it feels alive. The air in this secret chamber is cold, a deep, silent cold that has not been disturbed for centuries. Outside, the world believes the emperor and the moon priestess joined their houses to unify the land through political marriage. The forgery claims that the first Christian emperor, Constantine, gave the Pope and his successors absolute spiritual and temporal power over the entire Western Roman Empire. A lie so audacious, so total, it creates a new reality. It bestows the right to declare a rival emperor illegitimate, a heretic, a monster. It gives them the right to hunt. You watch the scribe press the warm wax seal, the final punctuation on a sentence of death for an entire dynasty. This is not just a power grab. This is the birth of institutionalized fake news, the original sin of weaponized information. The only light is a single, sputtering lamp, its flame throwing your shadow, a monstrous dancing giant, against the curved stone walls. Before you are not scrolls of prophecy, but 3 immense bowls, cast from polished bronze and filled to the very brim with still, black water. The priests who watch you from the shadows of the stairwell, their beads clicking like the legs of nervous insects, think you are scrying. They believe you are divining the emperor's future in the lamp's distorted reflection. They are wrong. You are not looking. You are listening. And then the drought came, just as the mat predicted. Your crops withered, your people starved, and the emperor's agents came to collect the grain that didn't exist, bankrupting you, seizing your lands as collateral. He conquered your entire duchy without losing a single soldier. The only sound of his victory was the scrape of a quill on parchment, a sound more devastating than 1,000 screams. This is why this knowledge had to be buried. The air itself tastes of power, a sharp metallic tang on your tongue, like licking a silver coin. This is the scent of a secret empire. Forget the feudal lord in his drafty castle. Forget the bishop in his cathedral. Here, authority wears a different face. You see her now, seated not on a throne of gold, but one of polished, unadorned silver that seems to drink the light from the glowing mineral veins in the walls. They call her the Bride of the Moon. The church chronicles will tell you he was a lunatic, whispering to demons in the dead of night. But what they don't want you to know is that the ritual they called madness was actually a secret that could shatter an empire. You are there. The cold night air is a physical thing, smelling of sharp pine and the deep, damp breath of the forest floor. It clings to your skin, seeping through your wool cloak. There is no fire for warmth, only the blazing, sterile light of a full silver moon that bleaches all color from the world. 99% of the world has been taught that the fall was swift, a surprise attack by barbarians and zealots. The secret, hidden in this fused lead, is that they knew the end was coming. The church and the nobles, their power threatened by a science that made their gods seem small, were consolidating. They were marching, and the weather manipulation, the technology that fed millions and was branded as demonic heresy, it wasn't just for crops. You read the words, and the air in the room feels thin. It was a weapon of last resort. The silver particles, suspended in the blood and tissue of every dosed individual, would vibrate in perfect unison. A shiver runs through you as you realize the truth. They weren't just building a resistance. They were building a network, a biological telegraph system, a web of human beings connected by a silent, instantaneous, invisible signal. An internet of blood and silver, powered by the stars. And the only question left screaming from the page is not how, but whether they succeeded. a divine and legal permission slip to hunt and destroy a man they could not defeat on the battlefield, and to seize the immense wealth of his allies, the so-called lunar clans, whose silver and iron mines in the deep woods and high mountains funded an empire loyal only to the moon and the old ways. The church needed their land, they needed their mines, but most of all, they needed to extinguish the light of Lycanus, a ruler whose influence was a heresy made flesh. They called it astrology and dismissed it as a fool's game. But what they don't want you to know is that the horoscopes and elaborate star charts were a lie. A clever cover for a science so far ahead of its time, it would have been burned as heresy. You are not a fool. You are the Emperor's listener, and tonight, you can feel the truth approaching. Here, in the highest, coldest room of the Palace Observatory, the air is blade thin. Famine is a tool to keep the masses docile, dependent, and prayerful. But Lycanus proves that famine isn't divine will, it's a predictable science. He proves that man, with enough knowledge, can master his own destiny. And that is a truth more terrifying to the established order than any army. Just last spring, while your priests were blessing the fields, Lycanus was advising the emperor's merchants. They quietly sent agents into your lands, not with swords, but with contracts. They bought the rights to your future harvest for a pittance. You and your advisors laughed at their folly. The history you've been sold is a lie. They tell you medieval women were property, their lives dictated by fathers, then husbands, then sons. 99% of people still believe this carefully constructed narrative of powerlessness. But the most dangerous truths aren't shouted from pulpits. They're whispered in darkness, etched into metals the church could never melt down. You feel a chill that has nothing to do with the night air. It's the cold breath of a cavern, deep beneath the earth, a place that officially doesn't exist. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 888. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. You feel a cold dread climbing your spine, a primal fear that has nothing to do with the sterile modern room. This is a message in a bottle, thrown across an ocean of manufactured darkness. The first legible phrases flicker into existence, translated by the humming algorithm. It is not the Emperor's hand. It is finer, more fluid. It is the Moon Priestess. You are reading her final testament. Her words are not of surrender, but of a terrible, failed gamble. They knew they were a power source. The final, terrifying application of the silver cure wasn't just to heal the body. It was to use it, to turn it into a receiver. The plan is laid bare in a script that seems to tremble with its own audacity, to secretly disseminate the silver cure to hundreds, thousands of followers. And then, from their stone observatories, using focused lenses and vast, resonating dishes aimed at the moon, they would broadcast a specific frequency, a silent note, carried on the light itself. 99% of people who know of it today accept it as one of the great forgeries of history, a blatant power grab by the church. But they don't know the real reason it was born. They don't know the name that was whispered in the secret councils that commissioned this forgery. The name they needed to erase from time itself. Emperor Lycanus. This document was never about general authority. It was a weapon forged for a single purpose: But as the codex details the precise amounts, the delivery methods, the predicted psychological effects, a colder truth emerges. This was more than just political assassination. The sheer meticulous detail betrays a different purpose. This wasn't just a murder. For Lycanus, this was an experiment, a field test. He had just proven he could dismantle the sanity of an entire territory, using only a handful of fungus and his enemy's faith. The question that haunts you isn't how he eliminated a rival. It's what grander, more terrible event he was rehearsing for. They are using astronomical knowledge to predict weather patterns. They know 3 months in advance where the rains will fail. They know which valleys will be struck by a late frost. They know where the sun will scorch the earth into a cracked and barren hellscape. They are forecasting crop yields with an accuracy that wouldn't be seen again until the 20th century. This isn't about farming. It's about power. This is the secret that shatters the medieval world. The church maintains its grip by teaching that God alone controls the harvest. And you are terrified of what secret it is about to tell you. The church's own Inquisition records, sealed until a leak in 1998, reference the damnatio memoriae of a lunar heretic, ordering every mention of his name and works to be burned. This wasn't just rewriting history. It was erasing a timeline that threatened their power. The first translated line from the Codex asks a terrifying question: who fears the light of the full moon? If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. The machine hums a low electric prayer. For years, this last page was a ghost, a single fused lump of lead that refused to speak. Now, in the sterile dark of a laboratory funded by shadows, particle beams are doing what fire and time tried to prevent. They are making the dead speak. You lean closer, the cold glow of the monitor reflecting in your eyes. Pixels flicker, arranging themselves into ghosts of letters, ghost of a language not seen for a millennium. This isn't history. This is what they were sharing through their network of midwives and heretical healers. A real cure in an age of prayer and pestilence. This alone was a profound rebellion, an attempt to steal the power of life and death from the hands of God and the Church. But the final pages reveal a purpose so audacious it chills you to the bone. The text points back to the astronomical charts, the complex celestial maps you uncovered in the High Observatory. It speaks of lunar harmonics and celestial resonance. The stars were not just for navigation. The man's name is lost to us, but his work will never be. He's not writing history, he's creating it. His hand shakes, not from fear, but from the intense concentration of his crime. He is mimicking a script 400 years older than his own time, carefully aging the parchment with soot and stains, creating a lie that will dethrone kings, justify holy wars, and redraw the map of Europe for 1,000 years. This document is the Constitutum Constantini, the donation of Constantine. A nation caught using chemical weapons on its own people screams that the videos are fake, that the victims are actors. A multinational corporation, knowing its product causes cancer, funds its own scientific studies to create a debate, a mystery that clouds the truth for decades. They hide the crime by questioning the reality of the victims. Lycanus and his emperor didn't invent this, they perfected it. They weaponized the very thing the church claimed to own: divine terror. They used forbidden knowledge to create an act of God. Forget the crude maps you've seen in museums, the ones distorted by faith with Jerusalem at the holy center. Likeness has a different kind of map spread before him. It's a complex chart of lunar cycles, tidal forces, and planetary alignments. To the church, it is heresy. To a modern meteorologist, it would be shockingly familiar. Beside him sits the woman they call his moon bride, her fingers tracing the silver-inked lines of the star chart. She whispers of wandering stars and the subtle shift in the great winds. She isn't reading the future. She is reading the data. The codex that described this ritual claimed the trances had a purpose far beyond simple visions. It said the moon-touched drank from the chalice to do one thing: to hear the moon's voice. As your world dissolves into a river of light and sound, you begin to understand. You can feel a presence gathering at the edge of your new, expanded senses. It is ancient, silent, and vast. It isn't a voice of words, it's a tide of knowledge, a silent broadcast. The moon is beginning to speak. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. Or at least that's the story they want you to believe. But the official history, a tale of weak, forgettable rulers between 800 and 1000 AD, is a smokescreen. The Codex speaks of Emperor Lycanus, a name that appears nowhere else. A man whose power didn't come from armies, but from a forbidden understanding of the cosmos. They called him mad, a heretic who held ceremonies under the full moon. But what if his madness was a science so advanced it was indistinguishable from magic? A way to remember how to calculate the tides, or when to plant, or how to heal. You were wrong, so terribly wrong. The Codex, this living library of songs and patterns, wasn't designed to help you understand the moon. It was designed to tell you when it fails. The final, chilling secret isn't a celebration of the silver light. It's a warning about the darkness it holds back. For centuries, folk wisdom knew silver's power. A silver coin dropped in a cask of water on a long sea voyage kept it pure. A thread of silver woven into a bandage could prevent a wound from turning black with rot. In an age before antibiotics, it was the closest thing to magic. The moon cult, as their enemies called them, were mastering this magic. They were creating tinctures, colloidal suspensions of microscopic silver particles in distilled water. A potent elixir that could invisibly fight off infection from within. History is written by the victors, but what if the ink itself is a lie? A poison that rewrites the past to kill a future they fear. In a chamber deep in the heart of Rome, where the stones sweat a perpetual chill, a man hunches over a desk. You are there, a shadow in the corner, watching. The only sound is the frantic scratching of a quill on vellum, a sound like a mouse clawing its way out of a trap. The air is thick with the scent of oak gall ink, beeswax, and cold, calculated treachery. But the truth is, this was a perfect crime. A biological attack disguised as a miracle of damnation. The victims writhe in the streets, their minds aflame with visions of hell, their bodies contorting in the agony of St. Anthony's fire, and their own priests tell them they deserve it. Power isn't just the sword. It's the ability to write the story of your enemy's destruction. You see it mirrored today, a ghost of a tactic played out on a global stage. But while your fields turn to dust and your people gnaw on shoe leather, his empire flourishes. You feel a dread that is colder than the stone, a fear that tastes like rust in the back of your throat. This isn't the hand of God. This is the work of a devil, or something far, far worse. The devil has a name, Lycanus, and he isn't in a throne room. He's in an observatory, a tower that smells of old parchment, beeswax, and ozone from a recent storm. He isn't praying, he is watching, he is measuring. The stone walls around you seem to breathe, the shadows coiling like living things. Your skin crawls, but it is not the crawling of fear. It is the feeling of your own awareness expanding, pushing against the confines of your skull, like a chick breaking its shell. You can feel the thoughts of the person next to you, not as words, but as a color, a pressure. The ASMR quality scrape of a fingernail against the stone floor is a symphony. This isn't demonic possession. It is a door swinging open onto a much larger reality. The metallic tang of fear and discovery coats your tongue as a crowbar groans, prying open a chamber that was never meant to be found. Inside, there is a lead codex, fused shut by time, bearing a symbol that has been systematically scoured from every known historical record. A story has been whispered in the forgotten corners of Europe, a story of an emperor who married the moon. Historians dismiss it, a fairy tale. But this codex, this is different. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. The spiral of the lace becomes a key, unlocking the true meaning of the song's lyrics. The lyrics, in turn, provide the sequence for the herbs. And the herbs don't form a medicine. They form a chemical signature, a beacon. Your breath catches, the candle gutters, and for a second, the room is plunged into darkness. The metallic taste of terror floods your mouth. All this time, you thought the purpose of this hidden knowledge was to preserve the wisdom of the past. 99% of humanity believes alchemy was a greedy, foolish quest to transmute lead into gold. It's what the history books teach, what the church allowed people to believe. It was the perfect smokescreen, a grand public spectacle of failure that hid a far more radical and dangerous science. Because the inner circle, the true initiates of Lycanus, weren't trying to create wealth. They were trying to create a future. They were working with silver, not in heavy bars, but as something ethereal, alchemical. You can almost feel the cool, metallic tang of it on your tongue just reading the words. The question is, what were they trying to power with this combined celestial and terrestrial energy? What kind of impossible, world-altering work requires a cathedral built on a river of lightning, aimed at the stars? A purple-black fungus that grows on damp rye, the very grain that makes the dark, heavy bread you eat every single day. A poison that doesn't just kill the body, it crucifies the mind. 99% of modern historians who study these dancing manias call them mass psychogenic illness, a product of superstition and stress. They refuse to entertain the idea of deliberate, large-scale poisoning because it shatters the convenient narrative of the ignorant medieval peasant. It suggests a level of cold, scientific calculation they reserve for our own, more enlightened age. The bishop told you this is God's judgment, a punishment for sin, a test of faith, and you believed him. But then the messenger arrived, a rider from the eastern territories, the emperor's lands. His horse was fat, his cheeks were ruddy. He brought tales not of famine, but of storehouses so full, the doors can barely be barred. Of peasants singing during the harvest, of children with full bellies. It makes no sense. The same sky stretches over your lands and his. The same God reigns. It's the very same principle behind the psychedelic-assisted therapy for PTSD and depression that modern governments suppressed for over 50 years, terrified of what happens when people realize the most profound truths aren't dispensed from a pulpit, but discovered within themselves. The secret they buried was never about God. It was about control. They knew that if you could find your own heaven, your own healing, you would no longer need to pay for theirs. Your breath catches. The flame of the fire in the center of the room begins to stretch, to dance in impossible ways. 99% of people believe the Dark Ages were an accident of history, a time of ignorance born from the collapse of an empire. That is a carefully constructed lie. The truth is far more shocking. The darkness was intentional, a curtain pulled over a history so radical it had to be erased. You can almost feel it now. The chill of a sealed Bavarian catacomb seeps through your clothes, the air thick with the dust of 800 years of secrets.